Hello, St. Anne Parish, and welcome to this week's Quick Things, which will include a few brief announcements and then a conversation about an important effort that is ongoing in Wausau and important for us to know about and maybe become engaged in some way. First of all, a reminder of our Thanksgiving basket collections, which are underway, various items that will fill these boxes actually that are given to families in our community who are in need of this assistance. So please be generous as you can in responding to this call. And also please be attentive to the list of items that is listed with this Quick Things email, as well as in the bulletin and the newsletter that all parishioners have received. Other donations are fine, except that we then the people who organize the Thanksgiving baskets have to go and find someplace to distribute those other items. So it really is helpful to those folks who give so much energy and time to this project to be faithful to the list and not bring other things that aren't on the list. And that's true of the collection as well of new coats for the Catholic Charities campaign for Afghan refugees at Fort McCoy. Some folks have already brought in some used coats. And while they have a lot of use left in them, the folks are asking for new coats, I think because of limitations of personnel and facilities to wash and sort and things like that. And so please, again, I know new coats are expensive, etc., but that's what they're asking, and we only complicate their cause if we don't honor what they're requesting. So new coats, the sizes and things. There's other winter items that are requested as well, and details are in the email as well as in the bulletin. So try to be as generous if you can to that call. In terms of the old coats, I'll speak to that in a moment. We do have a destination set for those, but it won't be Fort McCoy. So again, new coats are what are requested for the Afghan refugees at Fort McCoy. This past week, we have celebrated All Saints on Monday and the commemoration of All Souls on Tuesday of our faithful departed. And we will especially remember those of our parish who have died in the past year during our liturgies this coming weekend at the 4, 8:30, and 10:30 masses. So we hope you'll join us for one of those. A reminder that the 4 o'clock mass is also live streamed. As part of that, those names of the folks who have died in the past year are listed in our parish book of the dead, but you're invited to add the names of other family and friends who have died, not just in the past year, but those for whom you remember and pray for the eternal rest of. You're welcome to add those names to the book of the dead as well. And there's also an altar of the dead with photos of folks, many who died this past year, but a few who have died in previous years. And you're still welcome to bring photos to add to that altar. It's in the baptistry area. And then finally, a reminder of our Connect, Grow, Serve process that is underway. Please be attentive to the materials that all parishioners have received now, either at Mass or in the mail, including the newsletter with updated information about our Parish Reimagining project, but also right now to be attentive to the pledge forms for time, talent, and treasure, and how we can more generously give of ourselves, helping to connect with, help to grow, and help to serve our parish. So that's the end of the announcements. I am happy to welcome to our Quick Things conversation this week, Bob Buckley. Bob and our paths have crossed a couple times in my time in Wausau, but we've never really had a chance to have a conversation. Here we're doing it on Zoom. I guess this counts as a conversation. Bob is, I'm not sure of your title, Bob, but Bob is with the St. Vincent de Paul Society here in Wausau. So Bob, what is your title?
I'm the president of the Cabrini Conference, which is our local conference of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul.
Okay. And so we want to talk especially about the important work that St. Vincent de Paul does here in Wausau. First, Bob, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself? So what's your story?
Sure. Thank you, Father Tom, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So again, my name is Bob Buckley. My wife, Sandy, and I have lived in the Wausau area since 2008. I'm in the insurance business locally, and we have moved around the country quite a bit, but have called the greater Wausau area home for, I guess, almost 14 years now. We are empty nesters with the exception of 2 small dogs. We have a daughter and son-in-law and 2 granddaughters who live outside of Buffalo. So we like to say that we're one of the few people that take winter vacations around Christmas time to Buffalo, New York, to visit family. I'm one of 9 siblings. Grew up in a very close Catholic household, and so family is very, very important. I've been involved with the St. Vincent de Paul Society for about 6 years now. So that's sort of thumbnail sketch of my backstory.
Okay. And you're a member of St. Therese Parish in Schofield.
That is correct.
Sure. So tell us, first of all, just for folks who aren't familiar with St. Vincent de Paul himself, but then also the St. Vincent de Paul Society. Can you just give us a little thumbnail sketch of that?
Sure. So the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is a ministry that's been around since 1833, and it was started by Blessed Frederick Ozanam in Paris, really as a ministry to deepen the spirituality of its members through works of charity to the poor. And so that's really the core of what we are as a ministry. We do work with the poor, but the primary purpose is to deepen the spirituality of its members. It has been active in the United States since 1845. It started actually in St. Louis, St. Vincent de Paul, USA, and it remains our national headquarters. Here locally, the Cabrini Conference is a relatively newer conference. It's been around since, I believe, 2008.
And St. Vincent de Paul, of course, was a priest in France who grew up in opulence, really. And then, like so many of the saints, had a conversion moment and that really became dedicated to outreach and service to the poor. So you've described what St. Vincent de Paul does in the kind of the general sense. Yes. What guided you to this, Bob? And then what's your role in the local conference?
So this is probably a great example of, if we're open, God leads us to things. Mm-hmm. Probably about 6 years ago, my wife and I had some clothes to donate. And, in many towns where you live, there's a big box of, that you can donate to St. Vincent de Paul. I literally Googled St. Vincent de Paul, Wausau to see if there was a place where we could donate. And in the Google search came up actually a document, and it was the Articles of Organization for our local conference. And I noticed that a friend of mine, a person I play golf with on occasion, Ken Tokars, was listed as the president. And I thought that was very interesting. And so a couple of weeks later, was chatting with Ken and asked him about the society and what he does in the conference. And he invited me to a meeting and invited me to see if I wanted to participate. And that's how I ended up getting involved.
So technology can be full of grace, huh? It was a Google of grace.
It really was. And so I was a member, Father, for, I guess, probably about 3 years. And then I started my first term as president of the conference. So we are an all volunteer, all lay ministry, Catholic ministry. And we elect our own officers. And so I was selected to serve as president for a first 3-year term in 2018. And then our year runs from October 1st to September 30th. And so I've just re-upped for a second 3-year term. So I'm an active home visitor in the ministry and currently serve as president of the conference.
So, and it's also interesting, isn't it, that you and Ken were friends or acquaintances, at least golfing, and this had never come up in conversation because it's what we do. Our ministry isn't something we proclaim, right, or promote about ourselves. And yet it's such a significant thing to know about him, and you just kind of stumbled upon it. So a further instance of grace. You talked about the store, and that's probably what people know best about St. Vincent de Paul, and that's where we'll take those used coats that someone has brought us, intending them for refugees. at Fort McCoy, but they will be put to good use in Wausau as well by someone. Why don't you talk about the store, Ken, first, and then that can lead into talking about the greater outreach that you do.
Sure. So as you mentioned, our store is really the most, I'll say, the visible face of what people know about the St. Vincent de Paul Society here in Wausau. And it is a wonderful thrift store. We've got a great team led by Kim Kuski, who manages it. And it provides everything from bedding to furniture to home goods at a very reasonable price to people who come in and shop. So in a sense, it's a part of the ministry in that it makes nice things for the home very affordable for many of our neighbors who don't have a lot of discretionary income. In addition to that, the proceeds, the profits of the store all go back to the ministry. And so it really supports all of the works that we do, as a ministry and as a conference.
Is it the primary source of income for the ministry, Ken? I mean, Bob, or
I would say, Father, it is now. When we started out as a conference in 2008, we operated probably for about 4 or 5 years without the store. And we were really supported by donations. And we continue to be supported by very generous people around the area. And that's wonderful. And now the store has matured to the point too, where it is really the significant generator of funds to support the ministry itself.
Cool. And I guess it's important to remember that anybody can go and shop there. You want people to come and shop there, right?
We do. We're open 9 to 5 during the week and 9 to 4 on Saturdays.
Okay. The priests of the deanery and deacons met there last week, and there are a couple of priests who I think at some point in the next few years might be considering retirement. And as we were touring, I pointed out to a couple of them some things that might be nice to have in their new apartments or wherever. But so anyone is welcome. And now with Christmas approaching, there's a Christmas section. I mean, I don't want to talk about Christmas approaching because it's not quite yet, but there is a section where you can find Christmas decorations and things like that. And so just to know that's and there's a huge, I mean, really, as Bob was saying, there's a huge selection of just almost anything that you would have in terms of clothing or houseware, furniture, etc. Well, that's the most public feature, and that you have that great location on Thomas Street. How did you guys ever end up with that?
That was originally the Rose Garden. It was a function hall, and I believe I was not involved at the time, but the family that owned it, wanted to move out of the business, and we're looking to sell the facility. And we had some wonderful benefactors in the area that really helped us, made it possible for us to purchase that property. And we've done several renovations and modifications to really make it a very nice both retail and warehouse space.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just so prominent. It's like so accessible, like when you're dropping things off and things like that. That's the other thing too, to remember that if you have things that you think would be of value to other people and you don't know what to do with them, St. Vincent de Paul is a good place to take those items. And actually, it was mentioned in our tour last week that you're pretty well stocked because COVID led people to do so much house cleaning and tossing and things that there was a benefit to St. Vincent de Paul from that. But while that's the most public feature, there's the most important work kind of happens behind the scenes. And that is a personal outreach to folks who are in need. So can you just describe what that consists of, Bob, and how that works?
Sure, happy to. You're right. In addition to the store, we own a home for I call transitional living, people that are in between that we can help out. And we also have a program that we're starting up around systemic change to help give people tools to really become self-sustaining in their lives. But as you mentioned, the core of our ministry, the core of the St. Vincent de Paul ministry is the home visit. We have a ministry coordinator, and she works in our office at the store. And people are referred to our ministry by other agencies. Sometimes people do contact us directly. and they're in some sort of need. It might be that they've hit a bit of a bump and they're behind on their rent or their utilities. Maybe they had to quickly move out of a prior place and they lost all of their furniture. They need some help with furnishings, whatever it might be. And so as these referrals come in, we have a group of about 20 home visitors in our ministry. And we reach out to, we call them our neighbors that have reached out to us. And we arrange for a home visit. And it's very apostolic. We go 2 by 2, so we always do it in pairs. And it's very important that we meet with them at their home. And it's important for several reasons. First and foremost, it is showing dignity for the human being. We don't make them come to us. We go to them. So that's very important from that perspective. Secondly, it allows us to really assess their entire situation, because oftentimes when they contact us, they're speaking to a specific need. Again, it might be rent or it might be utilities. But as we can assess their entire situation, we might find out that they have other areas of need as well. And really to be able to sit in a familiar place for them, it is very, it's not intimidating for them. They're in their own home. It allows them to open up a lot more in our discussions. And we can really, find out what's taking place. How might we help them beyond, some direct, maybe financial assistance? Oftentimes, some of the best things that we can do is connect them with other resources in the community that they're not aware of. And it might be a food pantry. It might be, emergency utility assistance. It might be NCAP or Catholic Charities, so that we can help them really begin to help themselves. And this really is the core of what we do. And as you mentioned, Father, it is somewhat behind the scenes because that's not the part that people see, but it is the most important part of our ministry. And as we do the home visit as Vincentians, we are called to both see Christ in our neighbor and to reflect the love of Christ to our neighbor. And that's the part of deepening our spirituality as we do the home visit. We like to think that we're an easy ministry to do business with, as we say. If I could tell you a quick story on a home visit that we had a couple of weeks ago, and coincidentally it was Ken and I on the home visit.
Okay.
And we had a young man who reached out to us for rent assistance, and he'd gone through some bumps and had some physical issues that got in the way of him being able to work. And he's starting to get back on his feet. Ken and I met with this young man, and we spent about 45 minutes with him. We met his mom, who lives with him. He told us about his 5-year-old son that he has partial custody of, and really talked about his entire story. And we determined that we could probably help with rent. And so what we then do is the next morning, I contacted the landlord and to make sure that the information was correct and everything checked out. It's important to note that when we do provide support, we do not directly give cash to the neighbor. If we're going to help with rent, we arrange it with the landlord and send funds to the landlord, or we do the same thing with utilities. But I spoke with the landlord, and the landlord said, "I'm so happy that you are working with this young man." I won't use his name. He said, he's a really good guy and he's trying really hard. And I know he's hit a speed bump, but he's a great tenant and a good dad. And it's really wonderful that you folks are helping. And he said, what is it you need me to do? What do you need me to complete? And I said, no, you've confirmed the information and I make sure I've got your address correctly and so forth. We're good to go. And he said, really? He goes, other agencies that I've worked with, they send me reams of paperwork to fill out and it takes 3 weeks. And I said, no, we're good. We'll have a check in the mail to help out with this rent by next week. And he said, that's amazing. You guys are the easiest people I've done business with. And this is not a knock against other agencies, because we all know that they have things that they have to follow. They're doing what they need to do, and God bless them for helping. But we like to think we're somewhat frictionless. And so then later that day, I called our neighbor back to let him know what we were going to do. And it was interesting, Father. The first thing that he said was not, hey, thanks for the help for rent. He said, thank you and Ken for taking the time to come and visit me and
Yeah.
talk with me. He said that, it was really important for me to share my story and listen to your perspectives, and that really meant a lot to me. And oh, by the way, thanks for the help with Brent.
Yeah.
And Ken and I, encouraged him about places that he could be looking for employment. He was actively doing that. But the fact that we spent the time with him and getting to know him as a person. We discussed his spirituality. We found out that as a teenager, he had been born again, hadn't been practicing his faith a whole lot. But at the end of our visit, we stood and we said the Lord's Prayer, which he was able to say verbatim. So we knew that he had that in his background. And so that's, kind of the typical story of a home visit.
Well, and it just as you describe it, Bob, it has such a gospel element to it, where you're going to like Jesus would go to the person's home often to be with them, encountering them. So you started doing this, like, what did you say? How many years ago?
About 6 years ago.
How did you get, I'm sure it was was it awkward at the beginning or a little disconcerting?
So fortunately, Ken not only invited me to my first meeting, he invited me on the first home visit. And so I went with Ken, and obviously he was very experienced at it. So that was very helpful. And as we bring new members in, we do have training. We have a manual, that people can, describes the home visit and how to go about it. About once a year, we do, it's called Ozanam training for new members. Last year during the pandemic, we did it virtually. It was, I'll call it maybe a slightly abbreviated version, but we're able to do it. We love to do it in person, and we typically do it with neighboring conference in Marshfield. But really the best way to learn to do the home visits is to do them. Sure. And we always recommend that people, when they're starting out, go on home visits with several different Vincentians, because you learn different styles. Everybody has a style. We do have protocols in what is to take place in the home visit, but it is also a very personal ministry. And so every Vincentian, every home visitor brings their spirituality, their style to that home visit. Sure.
And this is something for which you were inviting, encouraging people to consider joining you, correct?
Very, very much so. I think, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we've got about 20 home visitors, some more active than others, because we simply ask people to participate at whatever level of capacity they have. Right. So there's not an expectation of a certain amount. As we read in the gospel, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. We have been blessed with resources, and we're very appreciative for that. We would love to have more home visitors to help us expand the ministry. And our conference, Father, is a little different than what I'll say a typical St. Vincent de Paul conference. Most of the conferences around the world are very parish-based. So they're started by parish, and they remain a part of that parish's ministry. Certainly our conference here in Wausau, we were started within the East Side parishes, St. Michael's and Resurrection, and that's where it got its start. But we are not tied to any particular parish. We have home visitors from several parishes. As you mentioned earlier, I'm at St. Therese. We have home visitors from St. Anne's, obviously St. Michael's and Resurrection, Holy Name of Jesus. I'm probably missing one or two as well, but we are represented in our membership by several parishes. And the area that we provide support, where we support our neighbors, really is, quite frankly, Marathon County. And we have done home visits from Abbotsford to Hatley and Brokaw to Knowlton.
Yeah. And I really think I'm glad that you mentioned that, Bob, because I think that's an important quality, that it's not parish based. That parochialism that develops within parishes or among parishes is really harmful, actually, to the work of the gospel in many instances. So it's good that that was, at least after it was established, it became a community-wide effort.
Yes.
And so if folks are interested in learning more about being home visitors, what can they do?
I certainly invite anybody to reach out to me directly. My email address is rbuckley@charter.net.
That's pretty
Again,
easy.
yep, rbuckley@charter.net. And, just simply, let me know what your interest is. And we would love to invite you to one of our conference meetings. As a conference, as a ministry group, we meet twice a month. We just switched from Wednesdays to Thursdays, but we typically meet the first and third Thursday of every month at 5:30 at the store. We have a conference room at the store, and that's where we meet. And we meet it's about an hour and a quarter to an hour and a half. We have three elements of our meetings. It is spirituality, friendship, and service. And so we have a lot of prayer. We have a lot of good discussion and laughter. But then those are the meetings where we go through all of what we call the cases that have come in over the last couple of weeks, and where the home visitors then agree to take these cases, and we assign them out.
I sat in on one of those meetings recently, and there was an element of it that reminded me of the gospel where the 72 return and they're sharing of their experience. So Jesus had sent them out, and now they come back to talk about what they had encountered and kind of sharing the joys and struggles of those encounters, because there is struggle involved in this, obviously. The meeting you described was wonderful, but I'm sure there are some that are a little more discouraging or distressing in various ways. But that's the reality, and that speaks to the importance of this ministry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Father. And so we do use the meetings too to discuss cases and where we've had some challenges. And then, as you said, we don't expect to have effusive thanks every time when we do a home visit. And sometimes they can be a little bit challenging. We always try and remember, though, the neighbors that we're working with oftentimes are under a lot of stress in their lives, so we recognize that. And whatever the outcome of the home visit, if we always remember that the primary purpose of the ministry is to deepen our spirituality, and so it's about how we reflect the love of Christ and look for Christ in our neighbor. That's the most important part of it.
Sure. Wonderful. Well, a good note on which to conclude the conversation. There were a couple of things I'd wanted to say at the beginning. First of all, when we had some meetings this last summer, Bob, we're going to be renovating our church. And one of the concerns that was expressed at the meeting was that we shouldn't be spending money on renovating our church when there are people in need that we should share that money with. And that has been, and I acknowledge that is a legitimate question, and it's something that has challenged the church for centuries, of course. The other one was that the other question that's come up more recently, and my answer to that initially was that we do both. We renovate the church and we respond to the needs of people in our community. But then it's also come up more recently, why are we talking about or anticipating possibly welcoming refugees from other countries to Wausau when we have people in need here in Wausau? And I think you would agree, I hope you do, that the answer to that is yes, right, we do both.
Yes. It's not either or.
Right, it's both. It's both and. And then the other thing that I wanted to announce or mention is that we will be, during Advent and Christmas, we will be collecting gift cards, which are used in your outreach, and we'll identify the stores and the denominations that are needed. We did this last year, and it was helpful for your ministry, so we will do that again.
Yes, and I'd really like to thank you and St. Anne Parish, Father, because St. Anne really has been a supporter of St. Vincent de Paul. As you mentioned, the gift cards, which were wonderful over the past year that we've been able to provide our neighbors, even as a supplement in addition to whether help with rent or utilities.
It could actually be a gift. It could be a gift card. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The youth group in the past has wrapped gifts for us that we've been able to give out, and about very meaningful boots and gloves and the like, and that's been very helpful. And then, of course, the Thanksgiving dinner boxes. St. Anne reaches out to us every year, and we can provide them with names of neighbors that we've helped recently that we think could really benefit from one of those Thanksgiving boxes. So we truly appreciate the support and partnership of St. Anne Parish.
Well, you're welcome. And nice tie-in, Bob, to my very first announcement of this quick things about the Thanksgiving baskets. So good.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob, for being with us. I'm going to conclude with a prayer that kind of speaks to our observance this week of All Saints and All Souls. And so we'll conclude with that. Lord God, whose days are without end and whose mercies beyond counting, keep us mindful that life is short and the hour of death unknown. Let your Spirit guide our days on earth in the ways of holiness and justice, that we may serve you in union with the whole church, sure in faith, strong in hope, perfected in love. And when our earthly journey is ended, lead us rejoicing into your kingdom, where you live and reign forever and ever. Amen. St. Vincent de Paul, pray for us.